Let's take these popular kids app icons and make them horror themed, starting with Khan Academy. I began by building a completely new scene, so I started with a blue background and added a subtle floor underneath, so the icon actually had something to sit on. Once that was in place, I traced the face shape from the original icon and clipped the fabric texture inside it to instantly move it away from that clean 2D-ish look. From there, I shaded everything as if the light was coming from the left. I started with the shadows, then I gave it highlights, and that already made it a lot better. Then I added a stitch mouth, not too extreme, just enough to make it feel wrong. For the eyes, I used buttons, but warped them into perspective so that matched the curvature of the face instead of floating on top of it. After some extra shading, I softened the edges, added loose hairs to break the silhouette, and rebuilt the beanie from scratch with its own highlights and texture. At this point, it still felt a little too cute, so I added dirt, screws embedded into the face, and a subtle reflection on the floor. As if a reflection on the floor makes it less cute. Anyways, then I finished it with a camera raw filter, and this is Khan Academy, but horror. It's not terrifying yet, but this is just a warm-up because everything after this stops being friendly very quickly. Next up, Duolingo ABC. I started by rebuilding the icon using three main shapes: the left wing, the right wing, and the face. I experimented with realism first, but that didn't really work. It felt disconnected from the original style. So instead, I rebuilt the beak from scratch, making the upper part sharper and more aggressive while keeping the original proportions. That's when I had the idea to open the face. Jesus, I surely feel like I'm keeping my promise that it stops being friendly now. Then I brought in loose flash textures and an owl skull. Then warped everything into place so it looked like the face was torn open instead of layered on top. I cut away parts of the original face so the skull and flesh sat behind it, not in front. Only the upper part of the skull remained visible, aligned with the beak, and I pushed highlights on the bone to make it pop through the opening. Finish it off with blood, change the ABC lettering to a horror font, and that was basically it. Duolingo ABC, but terrifying. And now we move on to the designs that actually take time. Now the next one is PBS Kids. Now for PBS Kids, I started with a sketch. I rebuilt the entire character as a zombie. Face first, then the mouth, nose, ears, shirt, and teeth. Each tooth on its own layer, and each tooth with a different shape. Lucky me. Now, most of the next stage was shading, so let's turn this into a shading montage. Alright, after the base was done, I added a zombie skin texture and rebuilt the eyes inside the sockets with proper shadows behind them. The nose was completely reworked, the neck got muscle shading, and the mouth received deeper shadows so the teeth felt like they were pushing through skin. Then I color corrected the hair, gave it its own shadow, and lifted off the face. The shirt came from a dirty fabric texture, but I painted in extra wrinkles so it felt worn and used. Finally, I rebuilt the PBS Kids logo to match the original layout, added subtle blood, and locked everything together. And this was PBS Kids, but zombified. Is that even a word? Like this video if you don't want to turn into a zombie tonight. Thank you! And at this point, the icon no longer felt like an app. And from here on out, we stop holding back. Up next is Toca World. First thing I removed was the mouth because I wanted full control over the expression. I rebuilt it using duplicated teeth, made different sizes, and added shadows so they felt like they were actually inside her mouth. The eyes were rebuilt from scratch, and then I removed the globe from the hand to replace it with a skull. And honestly, also because these apps use the same design over and over again. Anyways, to make that possible, I masked the entire character into a separate layer so it could work behind it cleanly. My idea was to turn this into a witch-like character, so I added a rope, rebuilt the face in full 3D shading, and reshaped the hair into thicker chunks with depth. Then I started working on the eyes, gave it a sickly yellow tone, and shading to make it cohesive with the rest of the face. The skull was resized to fit inside the hand instead of resting on it. Then I masked and shaded so it felt physically held. The hand itself was simplified because holy shit that thing was detailed. It ended up having the same color as the character with some of that texture, with an emphasis on some, subtly coming through so it didn't overpower the style. This is where the whole scene got color corrected and highlighted, which feels like a fabulous moment for a small montage. Then I added a camera raw filter, and that was not Toca World because I forgot to add the nose, which I did afterwards. So here you go, a nose. Well, the hole. And that was Toca World, but a horrific witch. Now, the last one had to feel like a full scene, and honestly, this one turned out... let's just watch. Alright, next up is Minecraft, and for Minecraft, I wanted the transition to feel smooth. So I placed the logo in the exact same position as the original before changing anything else. That part matters more than people think. I can come up with a fancy reason, but it's mostly because my OCD brain likes to clear transition from one icon to another. So, now that we got that out of the way, I rebuilt the environment first, a dirty wall, and I erased the area above the logo to create the illusion of ground and depth. My idea was to make everything above the wall become a cave-like space, and below it became the ground. At this point, the icon already stopped floating. It actually felt like it existed somewhere. But honestly, somewhere I already don't want to be. Then I added a custom shadow behind the logo with organic burnt shapes because, well, it just looks cool, okay? Then came the skulls, one placed in the foreground and one closer to the wall. Same skull, different treatment. Now, for the second one, I removed the jaw and painted grass into it by hand so it felt buried, like it had been there longer than the logo itself. Once the skulls were in, I went back to the logo and recolored it, darkened the bottom edge and fully integrated into the wall. Then I added horror Minecraft characters, and man, this made the edit so much better. The main one stood above the logo, backlit with mist so he separated from the background immediately. I kind of wanted him to have that Game of Thrones Night King aura. The second character was planted into the ground with grass painted around his feet so he actually felt connected to the environment. And finally, the spider, which I'm usually absolutely terrified of, so I'm glad it's just a Minecraft edit. I placed it on top of the logo, angled it forward like it was rushing towards the camera, and then every leg got contact shadow and then the logo got shadows painted underneath. Now it wasn't just on the logo, it felt attached to it. After that, I unified everything with lighting. Every character received consistent highlights, contact shadows, bloom, and atmospheric haze, so nothing felt out of place. Once the lighting matched, the whole scene finally locked together. After more dirt, blood, and a camera raw filter, I added depth of field to control the focus. The foreground skull softened slightly, the character in the back blurred out more, and the cave faded into the background. What stayed sharp was the logo, the spider, and the central figure. And that was Minecraft, but horror. Let me know which icon you thought was the worst, and if you enjoyed this video, you might want to watch this video right here. And oh, I know adults play it too.